What is up, Maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our Week 12 player pool video. We've done our deep dive into everything, and we are ready to lay out who we're going to be playing this week, who's going to lead us to the $1 million. Feel like I got a pretty good game plan going into this slate. Again, it's just going to come down to, like we've talked about in previous weeks, our big stands hitting. Feel pretty good about that happening this week. And then building the stacks around that. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. As always, if you're interested in getting this spreadsheet or my game-by-game breakdown spreadsheet that I create each week, feel free to email me at millymakermaniac@gmail.com, and I will send that over to you. While we're over here, we might as well look. One of the things that I'm doing this week is I'm targeting a few offenses that just grade well across the board. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in these games. You can see that these matchup advantages correlate pretty well with the implied team total. We got a few that are a little out of whack. Baltimore's actually showing a little bit lower down here, but part of that's just because they graded so poorly in games where Lamar was out, so that's dragging a lot of their grades down. But the offenses we really want to target this week, all over New England, all over Detroit, all over Philly. Got a little bit of KC, not as much as the spreadsheet might be telling us. I just think from a pricing standpoint, even though there's some advantages, I think ceiling could be harder to hit. And if it does hit, we're going to hit it with Mahomes and pieces. So we won't have a lot of one-offs from that game. But like the Packers pass game, actually, the problem is will LaFleur actually pass the ball like he is supposed to? And in this game, because he's been running it despite having mismatches in the run game week in and week out. But with Jacobs being banged up, whether or not he plays, I think this might be a week they actually let the passing game cook a little bit with this massive advantage here. Jacksonville, we have some interest in the run game. Baltimore, we just have interest in across the board. In Seattle, we have interest in their passing game. So those are the offenses that we're really targeting this week. Pieces of each of those top offenses with New England, Detroit, and Philly, we're kind of just targeting those whole offenses and mixing and matching how we're getting to those offenses. Those are our core focuses of the week, and then we're mixing and matching with pieces from these other offenses that we like. But let's move on over to the quarterbacks. So my philosophy at quarterback this week is that I don't want to take a huge stand on anybody. I think what this week is really going to be about is getting the pieces at running back correct. And I think we have some good players there that we're going to take big stands on. If we get that correct, then it's just going to be about building the stacks around that. I think at the top end of this pricing this week, we have 4 guys that legitimately I think could score 40. So we have to pay up to go get those guys. Those guys that I think are capable of doing that are Drake May, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts. May hasn't had a ceiling like that to this point. He's pretty much been hovering around 25 each week, but he also hasn't played the Bengals yet. So I definitely want to build probably somewhere in the ballpark of 10 lineups with all of these guys, just because I think that there's pretty equal opportunity for all of these guys to be QB1. There's nothing that when I was digging into stuff this week that it was like, wow, it has to be this guy. There's game script concerns. There's matchup concerns. There's a few elements there. You can poke a hole in a case for every single one of these quarterbacks, but I feel pretty confident that QB1 is coming out of this range. If it May or Mahomes or Jackson or Hurts are QB1, but they only score like 25, it's probably going to be one of those weeks where it's a matter of just getting the quarterback that had the best stacking partners, meaning like who scored the most at wide receiver with their quarterback. Because if everybody scores 25, there's not a huge separation between the QBs, so it doesn't really matter who you chose. It's just going to matter who had the better stacking partners. So that's a scenario I could see playing out this week where you have a whole bunch of guys hovering around 25. But if somebody were to separate themselves like Josh Allen did last week, I think it's in this group of this top 4. I'm not saying that necessarily is the most likely outcome, but it is definitely possible. I would say there's probably, 10 to 15% chance that for each of these guys that they hit their 40 spot. So across 4 of those guys, it's kind of 50-50 that one of those guys does it. And if they don't, then I think that these cheaper QBs are going to be the better play as long as they bring the best stacking partner or partners along with them. So May playing the Bengals, we like that matchup a lot. It's really just a matter of who scores the points. Is it the running backs or is it pass catchers? If it's the pass catchers or Drake May running the ball, he definitely could hit that 40. But if it's the running backs and it's not on pass plays, it could prevent him from hitting his ceiling. So that's the concern there, but it's definitely possible for him to hit that ceiling. Mahomes, they're playing the Colts in a must-win game. Mahomes has never lost 3 games in a row. So there's a lot of things like setting up for this game where you would expect him to have success in a big moment, as he's done that throughout his entire career. But on the other side of that, the Colts are getting Charvarius Ward back. They got Sauce Gardner now. Besides Buckner in the middle of their defensive line, this is the healthiest their defense has been. It is a home game for the Chiefs too, so that sets up well for Mahomes. I think that their biggest matchup advantages are going to be across the middle of the field. So the stacking partners I like the best for Mahomes are Rice and Kelsey, but I will definitely mix in some Worthy in these Mahomes stacks, but not really outside of that. Lamar plays the Jets. The Jets obviously are horrible. This feels like a game where we could just get vintage Lamar, but we could also get vintage Derrick Henry. So I'll be building some Lamar stacks actually with Henry. We saw that happen a few times last year where they were both top 3 at their position, which because you don't really think of those guys correlating, but they had some games last year where they did. I like stacking him with his tight ends, with Zay Flowers, and with DeAndre Hopkins. But you could also see this game where it's a Derrick Henry game and Lamar throws, 2 touchdowns and they win by, 20-some points and they sit him in the second half. So, there's upside potential here because of the matchup, but there's also potential for the ceiling to get capped because it's such a good matchup. They might be just dominating and taking him out early in the fourth quarter, and it doesn't do enough for him to hit his ceiling. I don't think they're going to be pushed. It's just a matter of, do they score 4 touchdowns in the first half through the air, or do they do it a few of those on the ground? So I think there's plenty of scenarios where this can hit, but there's plenty of scenarios where it doesn't. So again, that's why I'm not taking any big stands at QB this week, because there's holes to punch in every single case. There's not one that just jumps out. It's oh yeah, this is it. For Jalen Hurts, they're playing the Cowboys. The Cowboys defense played well against the Raiders last week after the trade deadline, but that doesn't tell us anything. They played the Raiders. They've been awful all year long. And I expect Hurts to have the potential to have a big game. Obviously, he has the capability of putting up big games, even if they don't do it through the air with the tush push. But these corners for Dallas are horrific, and you got easy stacking partners, to stack it with Brown, to stack it with Devontae Smith, and with Dallas Goedert, and that's really all you have to do. We can do some stacks with Saquon as well. The downside here, everything about the matchup makes sense. We have guys that are easy stacking partners that have huge upside and have had tournament winning scores this year and many times throughout their career. But we have an offense that has been struggling mightily and doesn't seem like the offensive coordinator, Petzing, is doing much over there as far as being creative. They're just trying to play these games almost to not lose them, relying on their defense. This is a game, though, where they could be pushed a little bit with the Cowboys' offense. You notice I don't have Dak Prescott over here because I don't think that this is a ceiling game for them, but there's definitely scenarios where they push the Eagles and force the Eagles to have to be more productive on offense, which I think they will be more than capable of doing against this defense. It's just a matter of how this game flow goes. I could see the Eagles winning a 20-13 game, and then I can also see 35-28 type environment where that you could see the Cowboys hitting their ceiling a little bit. But I think that the Eagles can hit their ceilings, especially at their price points, a lot easier than the Cowboys can. Really, what we have in this matchup is we have good on bad with the Eagles offense. They obviously haven't been great this year, but they have good players versus a really bad defense. And then we have a good Cowboys offense versus a really good Eagles defense. So those outcomes can be quite varied. We can see the Cowboys scoring a lot of points. We could also see them getting shut down. Both of those outcomes impact what Hurts is going to do. So I like Hurts. I think he actually is probably the most likely in this crew to hit that 40-point or that 35-point number that gets separation from all the other quarterbacks. But I don't want to take a massive stand on it either. I also love that his pass catchers are affordable. They're all under 6K. Where like with Prescott, they're both above 7K, making it real hard to, and even Ferguson's at 5,300, so it just makes it harder to stack those guys. Goff, they play the Giants this week. The Giants have been pitiful against the run as well as the pass. You can see this definitely being a big Jahmyr Gibbs game, but it could also be a big Jared Goff game as well. With Laporta out, it's easy to stack Goff with Gibbs, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and with Jameson Williams. We don't really have to get outside of that. We can mix in a little David Montgomery as well, but, Goff, my favorite stacks with Goff are actually Goff, Gibbs, plus one of the receivers, but we could also do a double receiver stack with Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams, and then we'll be mixing those guys in across all of our lineups. If we're not doing a Gibbs lineup, then I definitely want one of their pass catchers in there. And yeah, we want to mix Goff in there as well. Jordan Love is a sneaky one. He's not going to be very highly owned, but there is a massive pass advantage for these pass catchers, and his pass catchers are cheap to go with as well. So if he hits, that could really lead to a Milly Maker winning lineup just because we get cheap pieces, and then we can build in those core pieces at running back and at tight end. Like we could get to a McBride pretty easily with these Love stacks because we have some value with who his pass catchers are, with Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson being the main guys that we want to incorporate into that. Donald's coming off of a tough week, but against a much, much better defense in the Los Angeles Rams compared to the Tennessee Titans this week. I like the Seahawks to rally around Darnold and try to have a big game this week. Obviously, you stack him with JSN, but I also like the possibility of Shaheed having a big game this week along with Darnold, so you can double stack there or even just single stack with Shaheed, like at 9K, which is where JSN is at. If JSN doesn't have, like if JFN scores a touchdown and gets like 100 yards, like scores 25, at 9K, that probably doesn't pay off. So we could have an outcome where Darnold is QB1, but not necessarily bring JSN along if Rashid gets like a couple touchdowns. So I will build some Darnold and Shaheed skinny stacks, but most of my Darnold lineups obviously will have JSN because I think most of the outcomes where Darnold hits QB1, you have an outcome where JSN is getting around 40 points. Brissett was the nuts last week in a really good matchup against the 49ers. They play the Jaguars this week. It's a decent matchup, but not as good. And in those games, they've been like the vast majority of his points have been in garbage time. I think this game is likely to be a lot more back and forth. So I think the upside is going to be a little bit limited on Brissett. So I'm not nearly as excited about it as I was last week. But at his price and with his pass catchers, like you're going to Michael Wilson, you're going to Trey McBride, and they're both reasonably priced. McBride has definitely been priced up, but still fair value when you compare him to wide receivers. We want to go there. I'm not nearly as excited about it this week as I was last week, but the Cardinals shouldn't be able to really run the ball against the Jaguars. I would expect that they have to rely on the passing game. Again, a lot this week. I think they might just start doing it early out of the gate this week. And then down here, we got Shedeur Sanders. Everybody across the industry is definitely way out on this pick, but if we play this slate 100 times, I could see Shedeur having, 10, 15 games in that where he throws for 3 touchdowns. And if he does do that against this Raiders defense that is horrific besides Max Crosby, I could see a scenario where he throws 3 touchdowns. And if he does, his stacking partners are so cheap, it allows us to pretty much get to anything else. So I'm going to build 10 lineups with Shedeur. Build it with Tillman, with Judy. Fannin is my favorite play with him. You can mix in some Njoku in there, but they're all so cheap. You can do double stacks or single stacks with him. And if you hit on the right one, really we can have studs everywhere else. And it just feels like if it hits, which is low likelihood, but definitely a possibility, that's a Milly Maker type formula right there. So we want to pursue that. I think he'll be better than what people expect. More than likely, I think he'll throw for like around 200 yards and 1 or 2 TDs, which isn't going to win us a Milly Maker. And you can pay off his price for like a cash game, things along those lines, but not going to win us a Milly Maker if he does that. I think that's the most likely outcome. But I do see ceiling potential against this Raiders defense. I'm not scared of that Raiders defense at all. And I think he's going to want to come out and show that he deserves to be in the league. Like, this is his shot. And I don't, he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but I think that he carries himself with a lot of confidence. And he truly believes that he can play in this league. And that's a huge part of being a quarterback in this league, is just believing that you can do it. Let's give him a shot, see what he does. Good matchup, super cheap, opens up a lot of options for us with our builds. That's why I'm most intrigued in it. I'm not saying that Shedeur Sanders is equal to Drake May by any means, but with his salary, it opens up a lot of stuff if he is to hit. It sounds like Burrow's going to play. We should know later today for sure. They did split more reps yesterday in practice, apparently. So that could be an indication that we get to Flacco again. If it's Flacco, I would still build some Flacco stacks, but I would be more interested in Burrow for sure. That also makes Drake May more interesting if Burrow plays. But stacking with T. Higgins, even though he's more expensive this week with Jamar Chase out, it's still a good stack there. Yosevas is down there, I think, at 4,100. I'm in love with that play. The sneaky little stack I like with Burrow, there's actually 2 of them that I like to add to Burrow as pump plays. Gesicki, it looks like, will be back this week, and he's only at 2,600. If he's not, we can mix in Fant, but I really like Gesicki as a big, deep pump play. And then Tinsley, who is a receiver that Burrow really liked in the preseason and basically told the team that they needed to keep him. And I think this could open up an opportunity for Tinsley to get more work. Yosevas, to me, is just another guy. I think Burrow likes this Tinsley guy and could try to force him targets to make sure that he sticks around in the future. So that's kind of a sneaky one that I like to stack with Burrow. Not the best matchup for him here, but against the Patriots. But it's Joe Burrow and it's a Bengals offense. Even without Jamar Chase, like, they can score points. And if they get into a negative game script, you could definitely see Joe Burrow paying off his price. So I will be building probably 5 Burrow lineups. Prescott, it's, you got to squint pretty hard to see it this week, just because the pieces for his offense are so expensive, and they're playing one of, if not the best defense this week in the Eagles. I think that they'll score a decent amount of points, but I don't see him hitting ceiling this week that pays off. A Milly Maker, I'll probably just build 3 Prescott lineups. Daniel Jones, you could see this game being a shootout between the Chiefs and the Colts. I think it's actually the highest total in the week. Let's check that real quick. It's tied with the Detroit game. So, yeah, I definitely could see it. Stack him with all of his pass catchers. Since I'm only going to be doing probably 5 to 7 Daniel Jones lineups, I'll probably do primarily skinny stacks, and then I'll mix in a few like Pittman plus Warren, or I like to have Warren as kind of like the centerpiece of all of those double stacks. So Warren plus Downs, Warren plus Pierce, and Warren plus Pittman are the stacks that I would like to do, because I feel if Jones hits his ceiling, like, you would expect that Warren would have a touchdown or 2 in that. Don't love Williams this week against the Packers. I'll probably just build 2 lineups there. Jameis Winston is just fun because he's not afraid of airing it out. They're going to be in a negative game script as well. And to me, this has more of a feel of like what Brissett was last week. Now that I say this out loud, I want to move Winston over here, probably get about 10 lineups with him, just because I think garbage time is pretty likely. And it doesn't matter when our fantasy points are scored. We just need them to be scored. So I could see him just chucking it all over the yard. Darius Slayton is interesting to me with him. It sounds like he's going to play. Wan'Dale Robinson definitely could have a good amount of touches, especially if they are trailing late again, or trailing and in that garbage time that I'm talking about. That's definitely a scenario where, he gets a lot of volume, gets those 10 catches for 50 yards, but it pays off his price. But Winston can be could be a fun one. You can see the upside there. You can see where it crashes and burns as well. But we're trying to win a tournament. Winston is definitely capable of putting up 25 plus, and his pass catchers with him are super cheap. So if we hit on that, and then we have all of our other core pieces, our big stands that we're about to talk about at running back, that could be a nice payoff. So same philosophy, what we got going off with Shador here. Winston actually probably has more potential of doing it because you know that the Lions are going to score points. And for the Giants to stay in that game, they're going to have to be in catch-up mode, which is fun with Winston. Probably some picks in there, but probably some touchdowns as well. And then Tyler Shuck, another punt play. I think it's pretty low likelihood, but I'll build a few with him and how am I forgetting? Olave. I was wanting to say more for some reason, but yeah, Shuck with Chris Olave. We'll build a couple of those, but pretty low likelihood, but possible. All right, let's go over to running back. This is really where I'm taking my big stands on the week. Basically, I'm mentioning these guys because see some upside, but I'm not really playing them. I'm playing this core group. Gibbs is like my big stud here. Obviously, the concern is if he gets sniped for touchdowns by Montgomery, which is definitely a possibility. I will mix in a little bit of Montgomery actually, but primarily I'll be playing Gibbs in somewhere roughly 50% of my lineups and then mixing in these other guys. Henry against the Jets. Seems like classic Derrick Henry to me. I'm all over that at 7,600. Saquon against the Cowboys. This looks like the perfect spot for a big breakout game. Cowboys are really bad at tackling, and Saquon Barkley is really good at breaking tackles. That seems like a match made in heaven to me. Running backs against the Bengals are awesome. Travion Henderson plays the Bengals this week. Obviously, the concern is that Ramondre Stevenson is coming back this week, but I'm not really concerned on that limiting Travion Henderson's upside. He's the most likely to bust a big run. I think he's going to get the vast majority of the carries. I don't think that they're going to go back to a 50-50 split. It's possible, but even if they do go back to a 50-50 split, if he gets 15 touches, I don't see how he doesn't get more than 20 points against this Bengals defense. It's that bad. And then obviously here, all these guys are pretty much pay ups. So when I'm building with 2, possibly 3 of these guys, then I'm pretty much having to take value at wide receiver and tight end across the board, which is fine. I like that build this week because I do think that there's a lot of decent value with upside in the 5K range at wide receiver this week and some solid pump plays at tight end as well that I like. So I like that build. I'm going to be pretty heavy on having 2 and in a lot of lineups 3 of these top 4 guys. But I do want to mix up my builds a little bit to get some access to some higher end wide receivers / tight ends as well. So I want to mix in Bashal Tutin as well. He was questionable coming into the week, but he does not have an injury status going into the game. Had an ankle injury last week. It was a 50-50 split with Travis Etienne last week before he got hurt. Tutin's looks like he's got more juice though. I think that there's a lot of outcomes where these guys score the same amount of points, but I think Tutin actually has more upside for the boom game. And at 4,600, if he hits that boom game, that can be a Milly Maker winner for us. So I'm going to probably be somewhere around 15%-ish on Tutin. I really want to focus on these 4 guys and just bombard my lineups with these 4. But I want to mix in Tutin because it opens up some different builds that I won't have when I'm building with these guys. And I think he is the most likely in that range to have a boom game. So that's where we're going. Brown's going to be pretty chalky. Taylor, it's hard to get to. I'll build in some game stacks with him at 10K, but he has to basically score 50 to be needed. He's got to go another 3 touchdown game, which is definitely possible, but it just makes it so hard to build lineups. I think it's much more likely that Gibbs outscores Jonathan Taylor this weekend. I'd say I'd put an 80% number on that Gibbs scores more points than Taylor this week, and we get 20 or 1,700 in salary savings there. So not going to go to Taylor much, and he should be pretty low owns, but yeah, it's just hard to get to. It's hard to build lineups there. Bijan, I just don't see that offense having a lot of success. He obviously had a big game last week and is capable of doing it again this week. But again, Gibbs seems much more likely to me than Robinson. I'm going to take the stand on Gibbs this week. Chase Brown definitely can do it, but the Patriots' run D has been pretty solid this week. It looks like Williams for that D line is going to be out, so that could change some things a little bit. If Burrow plays, I like Brown more to just get it through the passing game. But I just see more upside with these guys, and it's not much of a salary discount. So I'm going to take the stands on these guys. Brown definitely could burn me, but I feel better about those four guys. Quinshon Judkins definitely could do it against the Raiders defense, but he's just been below average, and I think the majority of that, he personally actually hasn't been below average. He's been breaking a lot of tackles, but he's been right around 3 yards a carry. And a lot of that just has to do with the offensive line. This week they should have better push, but I could see a 20 spot, but I don't really see like 25 or 30 as a likely outcome. So that's why I didn't make him a core play. Kenneth Walker popped up on the injury report late this week, but it sounded like it was just more rest related. They seem to be leaning on him a little bit more. They're playing the Titans. He hasn't really broke one this year. I could definitely see him breaking one in this game, and him getting to 25 would be enough to win a tournament, and I think he could get to 25. If Jacobs doesn't play, it looks like he's going to, but I wanted to put this here just to talk about it. If Jacobs plays, we're out on this running game completely. But if he doesn't, Emmanuel Wilson is a pretty good value at 5,300. Still like Tootin to have more upside than Wilson, actually, so I would still have plenty more Tootin than I would Wilson. But he's worth mentioning if Jacobs doesn't play. And Kareem Hunt has actually been pretty solid in Pacheco's absence. You could see him fall in the end zone twice and being usable at 5,100. Again, I'm pretty much just playing these guys, but these are guys that I wanted to mention that y'all can mix into your lineups and you shouldn't feel bad about. Some other honorable mentions. ETN makes sense. Aaron Jones could happen. I think he's going to get a lot of volume, but that matchup against the Packers I don't love. And DeAndre Swift has been solid, but I just don't see upside for these guys. That's not why I'm not going there. Wide receiver, pretty straightforward this week. I'm not going to be able to mix in these guys too much, these top guys, too much with my builds, unless I'm building with their quarterbacks. So for the most part, these guys are just with their QBs. But if I build a lineup and there's salary available around this range, I like all these guys to be the most likely to have big games in this price range. But I think a lot of the big games are actually going to come from this 6,500 and lower price point. I like Diggs a lot. He's really like my pay up option at receiver this week. I like Devontae Smith more than A.J. Brown, but they're both, I think, pretty equal to likelihood of having that boom game, and they're priced way too low in my opinion. So I'll have one of these guys in probably 60 to 70% of my lineup. Love Jameson Williams. I can get to him without Goff, and that just goes the same for both Brown and Smith. I can get to both those guys without their quarterback, without Hurts. I think there's just potential there. DK Metcalf, I was off on him last week against the Bengals, which seems crazy, and I'm on him this week with playing the Bears. I just think that these Bears corners have been really bad. When we watched that game last week, when we were heavy on Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, they were wide ass open throughout the whole game. Just couldn't get the ball there. I think if it's actually could be a benefit if Rodgers doesn't play, I could see the ball getting pushed down the field a little bit more because Rodgers wants to get rid of it so quickly. But even if he does play, I think Metcalf can just get open. So I think this is one of those like random ceiling games possibilities with Metcalf. So I want to mix him in. Pierce is getting like crazy solid volume now, and he has big play potential. I'm all in on that. Like I really like this range in this 5K range. Like I'm getting 1 to 2 of these guys in almost every single lineup. I think there's big upside for all of these guys. Dobbs and Watson are the two go-to guys in Green Bay now, and looks like a really massive matchup advantage for them in the passing game. Whether or not LaFleur takes advantage of that is to be seen, but I love mixing these guys in this range. We saw Wilson with the big game last week, but with his target share and the likelihood that they're going to be passing the ball quite a bit against the pass funnel of the Jaguars defense, I don't think he's going to get 37 again, but him getting 20 is definitely well within the range of possibilities, and a 4,800, that would do just fine for us. I can see Shaheed having a big game here. I can see Slayton finally breaking through. He's been so close so many times, but Jameis Winston could be that secret sauce to get him over the edge because he is not scared of throwing the ball into traffic and going after big plays. So could be the week that Slayton pops off coming off the injury. Punt plays that I like the most: Luther Burden, DeAndre Hopkins, and Adonai Mitchell. Hopkins, we were kind of right on last week, not from a fantasy point standpoint, but he did run 70% of the routes last week. I think he gets more involved this week, and I think he gets at least 3 catches. That's my big prediction. Do those 3 catches include a touchdown, and it's enough to pay off our price at 3,300? To be determined, but if we need to punt down here, Hopkins I like a lot. Mitchell, they're going to try to see what they have with him. With Wilson being out, he's their number 1 receiver. He got open quite a bit last week. He did drop a few passes, but a few of them were thrown with little to no touch from Justin Fields. So I think there'll be a little bit more feel for the game this week with Taylor starting. So I could see him coming out of nowhere for a random big game, even at his price. If he scores 20, that's a huge boost to our lineup and could help us win a tournament for sure. So I like these punt plays here. Guys I wanted to mention that I think are solid plays, but I'm not really mixing in without their quarterback, but should be considered: Olave, Flowers, Pittman, and Downs. And then these are guys that I'm only playing with their quarterback. I think there's just better options in the similar price ranges over here. So these guys I'll mix in without their quarterback. The rest of them I'm primarily playing with their quarterback. Tight end's pretty simple for me. If we can get to Trey McBride, we're going to get to McBride. My next favorite pay-up option is Kelsey. I like Warren too, but that's primarily just going to be in my Daniel Jones lineups. I think if he hits his ceiling, it's probably the ceiling game for Daniel Jones as well. So we'll just play those two together. I think they just correlate too well together to really play apart from each other. Goddard against the Cowboys D. We want all the pieces possible from that game, so we'll be spreading in the 4 guys from that offense that could score, or 5 guys, I guess, with Hurts, Barkley, Brown, Smith, and Goddard. I'm ended up here at Henry and Fannin a lot, though. I like both these guys. The Bengals against tight ends are horrific. Hunter Henry's been involved in the offense year-round. Drake May's really good. Just looks like a spot where he could score 20. And at 3,900, we like that a lot. Same thing for Fannin. I think Shedeur Sanders already knows this, but is going to lean into it quite a bit this week, that his most reliable target is Harold Fannin. Jerry Jeudy, you can't count on. Tillman, it's yet to be seen. He's just been hurt so much, but I think there's potential there. I really like in my Shedeur lineups, I actually like the Tillman and Fannin stack. It's a fun one. If it hits, again, it opens up so much to where we can add a McBride, we can get to a JSN, we can go 3 running back build. It just opens up a lot of stuff there. I mentioned Gesicki. That's a fun punt play. Ferguson is too high price, but we will mix him in a little bit with Dak. And Bowers, as you see when we get to defense, I'm 100% on the Browns this week, who are playing the Raiders. I just don't think that the Raiders are going to move the ball at all. And so I don't see a ceiling outcome for Bowers at 6K. I just don't see it. He could have 10 catches, for 50 yards or something like that. I just don't see big plays happening. I think the Browns are just going to dominate them in this game. If you're not playing the Browns, other ones that I would consider are the Lions, the Packers versus not Jameis this week. They have JJ McCarthy. And so we could see McCarthy turn the ball over a time or two. And then the Saints, they got a decent matchup this week. Who they play again? I don't know why I'm blanking on this. Sorry. Game 12. Oh, yeah, they play Atlanta, the Kirk Cousin-led Atlanta Falcons. So The Saints are a solid play at 2,500, but the Browns, we look over here at the spreadsheet, like this matchup advantage for the Browns defense is crazy. Let's go over here. Yeah. Big overall advantage, massive advantage in special teams, and massive advantage in the pass rush. So, yeah, not too worried about Vegas having a big game. I do think that there's potential for some defensive scores there as well, or even just 5+ sacks to get us into a good spot. So that is a player pool. Let's build a lineup real quick, and we will get out of here this week. Let's go with the Jordan Love lineup. I think that's going to be pretty sneaky, but I think has pretty solid potential to hit, and will be pretty low owned. We get 2 cheap receivers there. There's our double stack that we're going to go with. Let's go over here, running back, get the studs that we love. We will go Gibbs, Henry. Actually, let's go Henry. I was considering Barkley, but let's go back to it. I want to have Henderson in this lineup, and then we will add our Browns. So we're going to go 3 running back build here. Browns leaves 4,600 at each position. We're going to go ahead and pay down at tight end here. See what that opens up for us. We're going to go Harold Fant. No, we're going to go Hunter Henry, sorry. Against the Bengals there, that opens up 5,300 for our last receiver, which gets us to DK Metcalf. Definitely see boom game there. Yeah, I'm just going to go with that. I like Metcalf. So we're going studs at running back with Gibbs, Henry, and Henderson. I could see 40-point games from all 3 guys, which would be sick. Getting 120 from 3 guys, possible. Obviously, we are playing value at wide receiver. We would be happy with 20 from all 3 of these guys. So that would get us to 180 there. We need Love to throw 3 touchdowns. So to get us to that 25 or even 30 spot to get us to 205, 210. Henry scores twice, gets us another 20. That gets us to 230. And then the Browns obviously score 1, maybe 2 touchdowns, but they put up a 20 spot at defense as well. Getting us in around 240. That 240 takes down the Milly this week. All right, my friends, I appreciate you tuning in. Let me know if you're interested in the spreadsheets. I'm happy to send those over. Just send me an email at millymakermaniac@gmail.com, and I will get that sent to you. Please, in the comments, let me know what I got right. Let me know what I got wrong. Tell me who your slate breaker of the week is. And please subscribe. I appreciate all the support. We're trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers before the season is over. We are in the mid 600s now, so we got a little work to do, but we're making progress. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Good luck in week 12. We will see you $1 million richer on Monday. Thanks, my friends.